The Babylon Project was our last best hope for sci-fi, a self-contained podcast 1 hour long located on the internet, a place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere, a shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcast. The year is 2016. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast.
Hello there, Babylon 5 fans. This is, as always, Raul, joined by my good friend Jim Arrowwood. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, yes, I'm great.
Great, but tired.
Yeah, well, that's part of the territory.
Amen to that.
Yeah, we're going to look at, divided loyalties tonight, right?
Yeah, favorite episode. I've got my Earl Grey here for it.
Ah.
Oh. This is what episode of Babylon 5?
2, Season 2, number 19.
Yeah, this is Season 2, number 19. Wow. We are almost at the end of the season, and as always, he turns it into a roller coaster.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
Let's just say this episode shakes things up a bit.
Yeah, it really does. Some interesting little things going on here and there, and some other things that are kind of surprising.
Things set up in some things that were set up in the very beginning with the gathering pop through.
Yeah, we're gonna get more answers
to
questions. But then, of course, as we know with JMS, as always, we get answers, but then that kind of adds up to a whole lot more questions.
Yep. And this episode actually has, I don't know how many are aware of this, but there was several short series of Babylon 5 comics, and one of them involved Sinclair and Garibaldi on Mars. And yes, I didn't get that mispronounced. It was Sinclair, Jeff Sinclair, and Garibaldi on Mars. It goes back to their first meeting, but it ties in very tightly to this. And if you've actually read the comics, you've got some nice backstory. I don't think we probably want to do a whole lot of cross-referencing here, but Straczynski was very considerate in how he wrote, because you don't need the comics at all to get everything you need out of the episode. It's just more of some Easter eggs, and it's like, oh, that makes sense.
Well, that's a good thing, because I didn't read the comics.
I think you can find them on Amazon. It would be worth looking up.
Oh, yeah, I might do that. And if there's e-editions, I'll buy them and download them if they're not too pricey.
Now, what else to say here? Probably not a lot. Like you said, we get a lot of answers. We get some resolution on some storylines and some serious shakeups. And I think the best way to take care of that is if you would give us one of your wonderful synopses.
All right, here it is.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
Lita Alexander, the first commercial telepath assigned to Babylon 5, returns to the station with grim news that the Psi Corps have placed sleeper spy telepaths at all levels of EarthGov, including on the station. She also explains that she is able to find out who the sleeper agent is by telepathically transmitting an activation code that awakens the real agent. Sheridan is at first against allowing Lita to possibly invade the privacy of the command staff, but changes his mind when there is an attempt on Lita's life. Once again, Ivanova expresses her concerns that she will not submit to a scan, and when pressed for the reasons by Sheridan, she further explains that she is a latent telepath herself and is afraid of what the Psi Corps would do to her should they learn her secret. After Lita transmits the code to everyone on the command staff, Ivanova becomes the prime suspect. Feeling backed into a corner, Ivanova finally agrees to be tested and is cleared. However, when Talia enters the room, Lita's code awakens the sleeper agent in her. After Talia is sent back to Earth, Lita leaves the station after having a very strange meeting with Ambassador Kosh. Well, there it is.
Character, files, open.
That really is what it is, a very strange meeting. Oh, in The Gathering, Jakar goes to a lot of trouble to make the comment that nobody is who they seem.
Yeah, I remember that.
This episode is an epitome of that.
Oh, yeah. It was prophetic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It was prophetic. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I suppose we should take a look at the guest cast.
Yeah, and there isn't a whole lot there to look at. We have our regulars, and returning is Patricia Tallman, of course, as
Lita Alexander.
And most everybody else we've already talked about at one time or another.
I mean, yeah, Zach Allen is still listed technically as a guest star, even though he's, by this point, pretty much a regular.
Yeah.
Well, not Zach Allen, but Kaneki!
Jeff Conway.
Yeah. And, folks, I'm going to apologize in advance. I am worn out, and I'm a little punchy, so my humor is going to be, what's what I'm looking for? Eclectic?
I will try my best to keep you under control. Please, no singing.
Oh.
If there's
not even some Narn opera?
No, if there's any singing to be done, I'll do it.
I've probably got the right voice for Narn opera.
Yeah, I've never heard Narn opera that I remember, but if it's anything like Klingon opera.
To be or not to be?
Yeah. Dak ba, dak be. All right. Well, I'm a Trekkie. I admit it.
Yep. Yeah. Trekker. You're no Trekkie. You're a Trekker.
Oh, either way. I'm not. I don't get into that too much.
Initiating plot analysis.
All right. We start with the universe today, as in the newspaper. As in, okay, after 300 years, USA Today is still more or less around.
Yeah, in the form of the universe today.
Mm-hmm. Though calling them the press it is still, even after 300 years, a little bit troubling.
I do like the way, though, that they recycle the newspapers.
Yes, that is very, very clever. And you notice they're still using real print. Even though they've got pads and all kinds of other goodies, they still fall back to real print for that.
Yeah.
The other folks can't see it, but you can see the bookcases and shelves of books behind me. I've just made it over to an actual Kindle Touch, and that's because there's nothing that beats the feel and the smell, the whole immersion of actually having paper. And I'll be honest, I have to grant Amazon some credit. They've gotten as close to duplicating that as you can get with the Touch.
Oh.
With the Kindles.
I absolutely had no difficulty switching over to a Kindle. I love it.
Yeah, once I actually started using it, it reads like real print. And then I discovered their pixels, their digital ink,
Yeah,
is actually made with ink particles.
Oh, okay.
And it's not just a regular glass. It's got a texture to it that tries to give old farts like me a comfort level.
I know people. Well, I'm older than you, by the way, but I do know.
I know.
I know people that absolutely will not use an e-reader in any way, shape, or form,
Mm-hmm.
which is okay. To each his own.
Yeah. And apparently we have a mutual friend and a patron of our show, I guess is one way of putting it, who told me he actually wore out a Kindle.
Yeah, Miles over at the Sci-Fi
Miles
Diner.
McLaughlin, yeah.
He bought it. He bought a new Kindle because he wore one out.
Wow.
So I'm not sure what it takes to do that, because my Kindle, I don't know, I've had it for 4 years, something like that, and it runs just as well as the first day I got it.
Uh-huh. Well, I got an old used one, which was in great shape for like 25 bucks.
Yeah.
I figured if I didn't like it, I'm fine, and I'm hooked.
I think I'll interject here that this episode of the Babylon Project podcast is brought to you by Kindle.
Oh gosh, like I said, I'm a little punchy. I'm going to be easy to sidetrack. So
yeah, we better.
Universe Today. It's funny because Delenn drops hers into the recycle and picks up her update, and apparently she gets a little embarrassed because they don't have her gossip column.
Yeah, the Ion Minbar.
Ion Minbar, yeah. I like the way she explains it. She reads it for the info on Minbar because her government doesn't give her enough information.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that kind of before. I've heard people say that if you listen to the BBC radio, you'll get the news about the United States before we do.
Actually, I do follow a couple of British papers, and not as regularly, but I do give Der Spiegel, the English translation of it, at least a look. Exactly for that reason. Sometimes it's hard to find out the stories going on here unless you're looking at some of the international sources.
Yeah, I could go into a lot of stories about how things appear in our newspaper, our local paper, and you go to find a follow-up story and there never is one. So at any rate,
well, on Mars, quick cut to Mars. We have a running man, and no, this is not a PKD story. It's a ranger running. Apparently, an agent working for him has some info that he paid for with his life, and it seems it's not quite safe on Babylon 5.
Yeah, it's kind of a scary little scene. He doesn't elaborate on what's going on. He just kind of hands over a data crystal.
Yep, and just says that they have to be warned.
Yeah, is that the sewer the guy's running in?
It looks like it. It looks like our maintenance tunnel that does drainage and stuff. We'll see a lot more of those. Tunnels in the future. When they talk about the Mars Underground, they're not joking.
It's really underground.
It's literal. Mm-hmm.
So what do you got to wonder, what is not safe on Babylon 5? Everything seems to be going along pretty well. And
yeah, sure. What is safe on Babylon 5, one would think, after the last couple years?
Well, if we have time to be concerned about the Ion Minbar section of the newspaper, can't be a whole lot of stuff going on.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. And after that, we get one of the more interesting scene cuts I've ever seen in television. We go from that to the men's room.
We have people in the men's room doing their thing.
Exactly. While Sheridan talks about how he misses wild trees. No connection to doing his thing.
Yeah, this is completely out of the blue. It's actually just a ruse to get some privacy, though.
Yeah. Though I will say the lack of wild trees is one of the things. If you remember, during the 90s, I lived in Los Angeles County. Uh, that, well, started out in Costa Mesa and ended up in Santa Clarita. And that is one of the things I missed most down in LA. It's like, I mean, you can go out to some of the forests, quote forests, but
Oh yeah.
it's almost like even in the park, you really just want to see a tree growing because that's where the seed fell rather than someone planted it there.
Oh, then you would have to go north, up the coast to Marin County.
You can go up to Los Angeles National Forest, but that's not the same. You're here in the Midwest like I am, so yeah, it's not the same. I've got a small copse of woods in my backyard that I'm actually probably gonna have to take a tree or two out.
Well, I do too, but that's because I haven't cut the grass in a couple of weeks. So.
Yeah. Oh gosh. But once they get the men's room to themselves, we find out why they're talking about trees. And Mike wants to add Talia to their little resistance cell.
Yeah, and it seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Quite. Especially with what she's done helping the Underground Railroad. She's got some Psycor connections, obviously, that would be useful. And we do know that Ironheart did something to her, and she's not just a simple P5 anymore. We know she can block a Psycop,
Yeah.
so she'd be a good addition in that regard. And relating to that, it looks like Susan and Talia's friendship has pretty well cemented itself. Turns out Talia needs a place to stay. There's a problem with her apartment, and she's looking at a place in Brown sector. Sounds like the low rent section.
Mm-hmm.
But Susan will have none of that, and she's going to bunk with Susan until
Yeah.
they get her air system fixed.
Yeah. Susan's really come a long way
Mm-hmm.
towards acceptance of at least Talia. I'm sure she's not all that hip on Psycor or Psycops
Telepaths. Or telepaths in
or
general.
telepath. Yeah, in general. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see a little bit about that before this episode's over. But Susan gets called away. Apparently, there's a rather shot up ship that has one life form in it, specifically one injured life form.
Mm.
And guess who it is?
Who it is? I mean, who is it?
Lita Alexander.
There we go.
The very first telepath that we saw last in The Gathering, which I guess is about 2.5 years of story ago. It's explained to us that she left shortly after the whole Kosh Tab incident. Remember, she actually did a telepathic scan, deep scan of a Vorlon, and she's apparently was never quite right after that scan.
And when you think about Kosh, who would be?
Yeah.
She's and she does in MedLab. She does not seem like she's real happy.
No, I just a little bit of feistiness there. She wants to talk to the command staff all at once, and it seems that okay, there is a traitor of some sort. Now, my question that is she with Free Mars, or is she with the Resistance, or is she with the Underground Railroad, or is there some kind of thread amongst all three? It's not really clear, except, of course, that obviously she's got a connection to the Rangers.
Well, I think she's just trying to get away.
Well, she's definitely on the run from Psycor.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's less, as she puts it, less of a get away than it is a get to, because she's trying to get to Vorlon space.
Yeah, she says she's drawn to Vorlon space.
Yeah, remember what we said about not quite right?
Yeah.
That would definitely do it. But we get the story here, and this is actually comes from an update from the comic. If you've read the comic by the time you saw this, you already knew a lot of this, but apparently there is a Psycor research center on Syria Planum. And we've seen hints about that already. That mention of that person called Control. that has happened a couple of times?
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems that the Psi Corps has been creating sleeper personalities as spies, and they've been embedding that personality deep inside. And apparently, if you give the password telepathically, the sleeper personality takes over completely, effectively killing the personality of the original host. I mean, think death of personality. But in this case, the spy's code name is Control, and Lita has the password. She just needs a line of sight. She's a little bit scared, and this is one of the reasons why she wanted to see everyone together, because Control is programmed for self-preservation.
So someone on staff is not to be trusted.
Someone on staff is not to be trusted. Wonder who that can be.
Well, it's, at this point, it's kind of a toss-up, because the only way to find out is through a process of elimination to find whoever the agent known as Control actually is.
And this is actually something that was set up in The Gathering, and I'll go ahead and say this now. For those of you who don't know, Laurel Takashima would have been the plant. She would have been Control. So with the staff changes over, people come, people go. She left the show, so they had to make some changes. Claudia Christian came in, created the Susan Ivanova role. So, to borrow your phrase, there it is for now. Off thinking about this, Sheridan is just a little bit cranky with Delenn. Not something that happens often.
Yeah, but he's also confiding in her.
That is true. As he puts it, it's about when life kicks you in the butt. Well, actually, that for an intense episode, it's got one of the funnier moments, and I think it's just absolutely precious that they gave the most humorous piece of the episode to Mira Furlan. Everyone thinks of her as the grande dame, and she is a brilliant, serious actress, but she can do some wonderful comedy. Do you happen to have that? I love it.
I just happen to have it.
Just happen to.
Why is it every time you finally get things calmed down and everything's going great, life decides to kick you in the butt?
But what?
What?
You said that life decides to kick you, but...
No, it's it's a part of the body. It's oh, you have the damnedest gaps in your vocabulary.
In preparing to come here, I was not taught the more colorful aspects of your language. It was considered inappropriate for one of the religious caste.
Yeah, well, you're missing out on a lot.
So I gather. But. I but, you but, he or she but.
No, it's,
But.
You sound like a motorboat.
Motor but? I do not think I like the sound of that.
Well, I don't blame you. I'm against the whole idea.
Then we are in agreement.
Absolutely.
There you see.
What?
Something has gone your way today.
Yeah. Delenn is the one thing that went his way so far.
Oh, yeah, they're getting closer and closer all the time.
Mm-hmm. I wish at times we had a video recording of this, because her expressions on her face as she's going through the butts is just hilarious. But, sorry, couldn't. The whole encounter rather ends abruptly. She's a little bit embarrassed, in fact, by the rather open display of affection. So, like you said, there's a little chemistry starting to flow in.
Yeah.
Mike comes up with his background check on Lita. She checks out.
Yep. Not surprising.
Not surprising to any of us. Sheridan, though, is still rather skeptical. And we find out that Susan is still on a rampage.
Well, yeah, maybe she hasn't come as far as we thought.
Nope, nope, nope. She's quite cranky about it.
Well,
And
and I can't say I'd blame her. I sure wouldn't be very comfortable with that.
yeah, but she's feet dug in, no way in hell are you going to let anyone scan me. No
Yeah.
one's getting in my head.
Well, think about it though. It's almost like one of those loyalty checks that we had.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. She does talk to Talia about Lita, just wanting to know if they knew each other, and they do. Talia's comment about Lita was that she was really sweet.
Yeah.
But here's where we find one of the surprises about Lita is that she interned as a psychop. Didn't like the job, but she interned as one.
Yeah. So, yeah, I honestly could see her getting into that and deciding that that wouldn't be for her, especially when you watch her down the road.
Yeah, she did not like it.
She's more of a compassionate person.
Mm-hmm. Now, didn't you have to be better than a P5 to be a psychop?
Well, Buster's a P10, right?
Right.
Okay. So,
Or is it just having an aptitude? Just to be more of a Bester style elite, you had to be.
I'd be willing to bet though that if they have lower ability people that they're administrative.
Right. Or is it that if you are a P10, you don't have a choice, you are a psychop?
Well, that could very well be.
Anyway, as their conversation goes, it starts to get into some areas of trust, and I like Talia's comment that so far the only person she's able to trust, that she really trusts, that she's found here so far has been Susan. We also get a little Night Watch reminder.
Oh yeah, gotta have that.
Zach still got the armband on. Extra 50 credits.
50 credits a week is 50 credits a week.
Uh-huh.
But he's not, he's not part of the program.
Nah.
At least not
well,
yet.
Yeah, at least not. What was that called? Chekhov's gun?
Mm.
You don't show a gun if you're not going to use it.
Right.
In stage plays. I don't know. I think maybe that might be this Night Watch armband.
That could be.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Lita's been cooped up in a holding cell for the moment, not under arrest, but so they're going to move her to more comfortable quarters.
Mm-hmm.
It's late. Let her get some sleep, of course. The lights go out, and someone tries to kill her, so she is now on the run.
Yeah. And what was Talia reaching for?
Apparently, she spent the night with Susan, so I think it's giving us a hint that Susan's gone.
Yeah.
She's not where she's supposed to be.
Aha. Now, if you watch closely, whomever shot at Lita was wearing black gloves.
Uh-huh.
And it was obviously, at least to me, a female hand.
Yes, and that was something that's been commented on before. That was a good observation. I had completely missed it. And in earlier conversations, you had pointed that out to me, and looking around, it's like, oh, boy, I must be the only person who did miss that. But, yeah. So, female hand, someone who's got some sort of telepathic skill, and apparently the, air quote, assassin doesn't even know that they did this.
Yeah.
Because it would be that sleeper personality.
Right. So yeah, we're starting to close in or at least get some hints.
Yeah. There's people on this command staff that this is not looking good for.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way we segue into Delenn. She's not quite ready to open relations with the Lumati. Guess why?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why right here.
Boom shabba lubba lubba, boom shabba lubba lubba. Hey there,
You got it.
3 bags full.
You got it. But she gets a call from Lita. Lita comes to Delenn for help.
Yeah, and Susan was gone in the middle of the night?
Yep, and that comes up apparently. Apparently, Susan's commenting that to Talia she had to take a walk, and it seems Susan's been hiding something, and she's really rather scared.
Yeah, and, fingers are starting to point in that general direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Delenn sets up the meeting, everyone there all at once, and she'll tell them when the time is. So that way there's no chance for whoever our female hand is to plan something.
Correct.
And this doesn't help Susan too much, but she's sitting there waiting for John.
Yeah, in his quarters.
In his quarters.
Tells him
Yep.
to change his lock code.
Yeah. But she finally comes clean. We now understand a lot more about Susan.
Yes, another aha moment.
Aha. She's a teep. Almost. She's a latent telepath. She can't read, but she can block, and she can sometimes touch the mind of another telepath. It's something that her mom had taught her to hide. Apparently, even as low-powered as she is, and not even a P1, that's enough for the Psychor to pull you in.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm guessing they're looking for the genes and guinea pigs.
So now we know why Susan has such a strong problem with telepaths.
Yeah, that and the history with her mom, and we get a nice little flashback to the striped ship with Susan.
Yeah, and just as we start to think, okay, Susan's okay, now we go back again and we're kind of pointing in her direction again.
Yeah. Remember that little image, do you know who I am?
Yeah, do you know who I am?
Mm-hmm. And this is about the time we get a message from Lita, actually Delenn. One word.
Mm-hmm.
Now. So Lita starts doing some testing. She starts off with Sheridan. And then she tries Garibaldi, and oh gosh, the way he yanks the chain.
Well, I'll tell you what, the way he acted and then the music that was behind it.
Yeah, he's lucky he didn't get shot.
If you didn't know, I mean, if you had watched this episode for the first time, it would definitely be a scary moment.
Yeah, oh yeah. Sheridan decides sort of a command decision. He's trying to protect Ivanova here. They decide to hold off on Ivanova, and we get. Let's just summarize the next 5 to 7 minutes of show as lots of silly visits to the captain.
Yep, it's the hit parade for sure.
And of course, the entire staff is clean. I think Susan's fear has kind of shifted by this point. It's less of a fear of discovery to her being afraid that she is the one.
Well, and that thought had also crossed my mind.
Well, as you've said several times, everything is pointing to her.
Mm-hmm.
So Susan finally does submit. She also gives Lita a headache. But she's clean.
Yep.
And you notice Lita is cool with, she's just surprised that Susan's blocking her.
Yeah.
She gives her a strange look, and she completely drops it.
Yep. Now we'll all stand around and sing Kumbaya.
Yeah. Well, this is about the time Talia comes into the room, and I guess we do get at least a psychic boom today.
Oh, I tell you what, to me it was more than a psychic boom because she was downright scary.
Oh, yeah. She tries to kill Lita. Now, I'll tell you what's scary is that the mole knows what Talia knows.
Mm-hmm.
So she's being ushered off station, and it seems that the Psychor is reclaiming her.
Time to go home.
Now, time to go home. Yeah. Yeah, Sheridan is pretty much counting on there being a Mexican standoff between his group and the Psi Corps. It's like, okay, yeah, they might know what Talia knows, and it might not be enough to put them in front of a firing line, but it sure is enough to cause a lot of trouble. But the flip side is Sheridan and his team know enough about the Psi Corps to have them under just as much threat. And then we get a flashback again. There's a couple flashbacks this time. Remember Kosh recorded Talia
Yes.
for the future, for preservation. One of the long suspected things was that, well, was Kosh basically making a backup of Talia because he knew what was going on here? Remember, Lita was going to be the first telepath.
Mm-hmm.
Then Talia took over when Pat Tallman wasn't able to be available.
Yeah.
I'd already mentioned that, Talia, well, it's been mentioned, I think, in the past that part of Laurel's role was passed off to Talia. The reason they did it the way they did was that Andrea Thompson was being written out of the show. There were some contract screen time issues and concerns, and the two sides ended up just more or less parting of ways. So Talia was going to be leaving.
Okay.
This is how they wrote her out. At least they gave her a really great ending.
Yeah.
If you think about it, if she had stayed in, and I know we've got some Bab 5 experts here who've talked to people connected within the past, Kosh has a backup. Ironheart had modified her. Does Kosh restore the backup? She keeps the Ironheart ability, then she sort of takes on the Kosh attaché role. If she had stayed with the series and Lita hadn't had to come back. Do you follow the progression that I'm?
Yeah.
That's always what I've thought had happened.
Okay.
Or would have happened. Ironheart had supercharged Talia. They could have. We will see in Passing Through Gethsemane at least that. And remember, Passing Through Gethsemane wasn't supposed to be a third season show. It was supposed to be a second season show.
Okay.
He had to delay doing it for legal reasons that we'll talk about at the time.
Okay.
So if that had aired, we would also know that the death of personality thing could be reversed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, remember with the monks.
Right.
So it would have been a way to restore Lita, where they have left her presumed dead or whatever, and not Lita, but Talia. See, I'm getting it mixed up now.
It's all speculative.
Yeah, it's all speculative. If anyone out there knows the actual story, I would love to hear it, though. I'd really love to hear it. Anyway, Susan visits Talia. And, yeah, Talia's dead. It's just Talia now.
Now, the Talia we know is dead.
Yeah. And the Talia that is there, I believe the word you used was scary. I think another word that would be good is chilling. Do you happen to have that particular clip?
Indeed.
Yes? I wanted to see you before you left. I know this isn't your fault. And I hope somewhere there's a part of you that can still hear me.
Always the romantic. The program is complete. The Talia you knew no longer exists. There's just me. You don't know what it's like, living only in the shadows of her mind, watching, laughing at all of you out here. Foolish, petty, stupid. There I was, trapped inside, able to come out only at night when she was asleep. Her invisible sister. And you believed everything she said to you. All the things you wanted to hear. All the words I whispered in her thoughts while she lay sleeping. The words that would get her closer to you and to what you knew. You should see the look on your face. My good and dear friend, Susan.
You're right. The Talia I knew is dead. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our new Talia makes Bester look like a Peace Corps volunteer in my estimation.
I will agree with that one completely.
Yeah, she is vicious.
And you saw the look of devastation on Susan.
Oh, yeah. Well, Susan came a long way to meet her halfway.
And she doesn't trust easily either. She was beyond crushed.
Well, and that would be the end of any hope of Susan coming around and warming up to telepaths.
I think so. I definitely think so at this point. There's times where I kind of wonder how like I said earlier, how the path would have taken if Andrea Thompson had stayed with the show. It would have been interesting to see the development.
I think she had to go on and do NYPD Blue, though.
Jag.
Oh, okay, that's right.
It would have. I think she might have ended up on NYPD Blue.
She definitely did. Off Detective Kirkendall.
Yeah, but Jag was her first gig. Afterwards, and if that's not enough to leave things with three balls in the air juggled at once, Lita goes and gives a visit to Kosh, and we have more singing Vorlons.
Yeah.
I won't.
Please. So I wonder what they sing.
That's a good question.
You know, Irish Eyes Smiling, London Derriere, who knows? I don't know.
Lita has a nice little heart-to-heart with Kosh. Apparently, she knows and saw a lot more than she has let on at this point.
Yeah, and that's one reason I think that Kosh and Lita have a relationship that is somewhat symbiotic.
Yeah, your comment about a piece being with her.
Yeah.
It may in this context here. Yeah, with Lita, there may have already had something like that happen.
Yeah.
I'm back. I can't stay. The captain's made sure I can get away before the Psychops get here, but I had to see you again before my ship leaves. I never told them. I never told anyone. I hid it all away in the smallest, tiniest corner of my mind. They could have killed me and they still wouldn't have found it. Only at night, alone, would I open that small door in my mind where I kept the memory of you and listen to your voice. Listen to you sing me to sleep. I hope I could come back again. But I don't know. Until then, Kosh, I want to see you again. Just one more time before I go.
I know what he sings. He sings Brahms' Vegan Lied.
I don't know you. Oh. Brahms.
Brahms, Vegan Lied, yes. No, I'm not Kosh.
I said,
Gotcha.
gosh. Oh, you notice Kosh has no problem showing himself to her.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah.
And
Well,
it leads credence to your theory.
she's seen everything anyway.
Yep, and it closes to the flapping of wings again.
Yeah, big wings.
Apparently. And you know, the way she is talking to Kosh, in a way, and this really makes you wonder what is up with the Vorlons here. In a way, it's almost as creepy as Talia's conversation to Susan, in the degree of it's just blind zealotry.
Well, they're
only in that sense.
well, yeah, and nobody else is that close to Kosh, and she's talking to him like they've known each other forever.
Right, and she's talking to him like he's almost godlike to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what you say, though, really does, it makes sense. The way she's talking to Kosh, it makes you wonder, does she have a piece of him in her already?
I believe she does.
Well, you kind of get an idea that at least we will in one or two episodes, that the Vorlons are definitely singling out people for their purposes.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. So what are some things we discover here? We lose Talia, but we're going to gain Lita back.
Correct.
We know who Control is. That was being talked about before.
Or was.
Right. There's some connections on Mars.
And in fact,
Psychor is up to its eyes in everything.
there seems to be some sort of connection between Mars, the Psychor, probably Psychor to Shadows is starting to look like. And you know what? If you trace it back to some of the stuff we've seen with the Warrior cast already, like some of their plotting is, okay, what kind of connection is there between Psychor, the Shadows, and the Warrior cast even? I mean, there's a lot of threads scattered all over the place here.
And some loose ends tied up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we now know that it's not only because of Susan's mother that she hates Psychor, but she has something to conceal and keep away from them.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, no, that is a lot to get handed to us in one episode.
Yep. And then we have more questions left behind. Where is Lita going? Where has she come from? Will she be back? Will she actually be back? We know she will be.
We do know, but that's a question for here.
Yeah, we do. You know, what is her role going to be? Is she going to come back? How is this relationship she have with Kosh going to develop? And speaking of relationships, what about Sheridan and Delenn?
Well, the Sheridan Delenn thing, at least. I mean, you're familiar with the phrase shippers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole relation. This was one of the big ones. The Sheridan and Delenn shippers were beside themselves when this episode came out.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, what is next?
What is next? Episode, I believe it is it 19?
It would be second season, number 20.
It would be 20, which is The Long Twilight Struggle. It was production number 219.
Yes.
Yeah, Long Twilight Struggle. We have 3 episodes left this season.
That's it.
We have the long twilight struggle.
Mm-hmm.
We have Comes the Inquisitor, which is a personal favorite of mine, just because of the power of the acting. And we have Fall of the Night.
Yeah, it's a good episode. I'm looking forward to this.
Which one?
This next one.
Yeah, Comes the long twilight struggle.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a wham episode.
Yeah, these final episodes are full of lots of boom.
There's a lot of boom here. Yes.
And speaking of boom, we had some boom today.
Yeah. We did have some boom today. At least
Andrea Thompson supplied some boom.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, we've run a little quicker than we often do on our episodes, but it wasn't that
It was a focused episode.
It was a focused episode, and it really, you weren't jumping all over the place like we often do on some of our other shows, because the stories are jumping all over the place. There wasn't really a B story.
Well, what we could consider a B story or a C story in this episode is more of planting seeds,
right,
than anything else.
Right.
Sheridan Delenn, that is a seed that has been planted and is now growing.
Right.
So
there was a little water applied to the Night Watch seed.
Yeah, then that's another one that we're going to see coming up later on.
And the Kosh mystery.
So.
And the Psi Core.
So we focused mostly on Susan's difficulties, Talia's alter ego, if we can call it that, and the sinister nature of the Psychops.
Yeah. Every time you think, oh, maybe the Psi Core is not necessarily that bad, you'll see something like this coming out to show the other side.
So we did have boom today. Are we going to get some boom tomorrow?
Well, I'm sure we will get some boom tomorrow. I'm assuming we've pretty much talked this one through.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then yes, there will certainly be some boom tomorrow. If there's not boom tomorrow, I know in absolute certain there will be some serious boom in about 3 episodes.
Oh, there's always boom tomorrow.
That there is. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.